So as we're going through the third chapter of Taanit, we've been talking about situations where some people have to fast and some don't. So we've been talking about, for example, a drought striking one city but not another city. And the Mishnah addressed the question, well, whose fault is it? And does everyone have to fast? But there are some calamities that necessarily strike the whole of the land of Israel. And the Mishnah, in the middle of the third chapter, returns to these calamities. Al elu matri'in b'chol makom. For these, they sound a blast in all places. And when the Mishnah says matri'in, they sound a blast, the assumption is that they also mean to cry out, to pray, and to fast. In other words, when the Mishnah says they sound a blast, it means that we've gone straight to the emergency level of fasting. So these are 24-hour fasts. These are bringing the Aron Kodesh out into the town square, putting ashes, and so on. Al elu matri'in b'chol makom. So for these, they sound a blast in all places. And now there's a list. Al hashidafon ve'al yerakon, for shidafon, which is some kind of drying up of crops because of too much heat. Ve'al yerakon, that is some kind of blight or plant disease. Ve'al ha'arbe, and locusts. Ve'al hechasil, and this is another kind of locust. Ve'al chaya ra'ah, for evil beef, for wild beasts. Ve'al hacherev, and for the sword. Matri'in aleha mipnei shehi makah mahalechet, and we blow for these because this is it's a makah mahalechet. Literally, it's a blow that walks. In other words, it's a blow that spreads. When locusts come to one city, they're going to come to another city. When the sword comes to one city, it's going to come to another city. In other words, once these things happen, the whole of the community needs to take action. And, it's a very interesting list, this. I thought it was based on the curses at the end of Devarim, which say, Yakecha Hashem b'shachafet uvakadachat uvadalakid uvachachur uvacherev, the sword, uvashidafon, here's the shidafon, uvayerakon, and here's the yerakon, urdafucha ad ovdecha, and they'll hound you to your death. But I just discovered there's also a mention of these. Maybe these are very common curses because they're mentioned in the prayer of Solomon. Solomon, when he dedicates the temple, he prays that God will always remember the prayer of the people of Israel when they pray in that temple. So God listens to the prayers, not to the temple. And he says, oh yeah, when there's a famine in the land, Ra'av Kiev Aretz. And then he has a list, Dever, when there's plague. And now he has our list. Shidafon, Yerakon, Arbe, Chasil, Kiye, Kiatzar, Lo'oivai, Eretz, Sha'arav. So when there's pestilence, blight, mildew, locusts, or caterpillars, or if an enemy oppresses them in any part of their land, well, of course, this is the cherev. And then he expresses the hope that individual people will pray and God will listen. So the sentiment expressed by King Solomon as he's dedicating the temple, and he's thinking about all these kinds of disasters. This is not very far away from the Rambam when he says, the purpose of the fast is to make people repent. And of course, the Rambam knows this prayer of King David, and you can feel he may be drawing on it, just as the Mishnah seems to be drawing on it in this long list of blows that spread. Makah mahalachet, blows that spread. And now we're going to have an example. It once happened that elders went down from Jerusalem to their cities. But the Bartanura says it is in the land of Israel. Although, very interesting, we are now going to go to Ashkelon, which is in the land of the Philistines. So we're kind of on the border of the bound of it. We're on the border of the band of Israel. We're actually not far from Gaza. That it once happened, the elders went down from Jerusalem to their cities, Vigazru Taanit, and they decreed a fast. Al Shenira Kimlo Pitanur Shidafon Ashkelon, because they saw in Shidafon a shidafon, a sort of heat stroke on crops. Kimlo pitanur, like the mouth of an oven. We don't really understand what this means, the mouth of an oven. Is that, I mean, clearly it might mean, the crops affected were enough to make bread to fill the mouth of the oven. But is that a lot of bread or is that a little bread? Of course, when we think about industrial quantities of wheat, it doesn't seem very much to us to fill an oven. Maybe this Mishnah means that even there was a tiny, tiny shidafon, only enough to fill the mouth of an oven, they still decreed a fast over the whole of the land of Israel. And that seems to be the tone of the Mishnah, because then it goes on to say, Ve'od gazru Taanit, and they also decreed a fast, Al she'achluz evim shnei tinokot be'erev hayarden. They decreed a fast because wolves devoured 2 children on the other side of the Jordan. So we're not even in the land of Israel now. We're on the other side of the Jordan, and we have 2 children. We have two children who are injured, 2 children who've been devoured. And Rabbi Yossi comes and says, Lo she'achlu. No, they weren't devoured. Ela al sheniru, because they were seen. They were seen. And when Rabbi Yossi seems to be saying, okay, even if we get a distant hint of something coming, we still need to make the whole of the people of Israel fast. And that feels a bit more like the shidafon in Ashkelon was a small quantity of grain rather than a large quantity of grain. But the Mishnah seems to be saying, look, if something is coming, then we need to take action. We can't ignore it, even if it's small. And then some of these are big things. Ve'al elu, for these things, matri'im b'Shabbat. For these matters, they sound a blast even on Shabbat. And this is really interesting because we don't blow the shofar on Shabbat, but we are going to blow a blast for these. Al ir shehikufa goyim or nahar, for a city that was surrounded by Gentiles. So these are being attacked. This is a city that's being attacked. Or nahar, it's surrounded by a river. It sounds like this is a city that's being flooded. Ve'al hasfina hamitarefet bayam, and for a ship which is it's being pulled apart by the sea. It's being torn apart by the sea. Rabbi Yossi says, and now Rabbi Yossi is going to get into the question of whether we blow the shofar on Shabbat or whether indeed we fast on Shabbat. Because so far we said, when the Mishnah says matri'im, it doesn't just mean sound a blast. It means we sound a blast, we fast, we utter the special prayers, we turn everything on. Rabbi Yossi says, le'ezra avalo litzaka. We sound a blast for help, but not for a crying out. I.e., Rabbi Yossi is saying, we're going to blow the shofar here to bring help. We're not going to blow it because we're going through the fasting business. And Shimon HaTemani says, Shimon HaTemani omer afal hadever velo hodu lo chachamim. Shimon the Yemenite says also for a plague, but the sages don't agree with him. A plague doesn't seem to be an emergency. And Maimonides does give the halacha here. He says, we don't fast, we don't blow the shofar on Shabbat, and we don't fast on Shabbat, but we do pray on Shabbat. We do pray on Shabbat. So, and he says that the halacha doesn't go according to Rabbi Yossi. So he doesn't agree that we sound the shofar for help, but not for prayer. We do pray on Shabbat, but he says we're not going to blow the shofar on Shabbat for these emergencies. So he seems to take the view that we're talking about blowing it for outcry rather than for something in emergency help. Because a case of pikuach nefesh, if you could summon help on Shabbat, clearly you would do that.